Viewers, you are welcome to this program, Nigeria Decides 2023, Issues and Voices. This program is the initiative of the National Working Group on Peace Building and Good Governance. This is one of the actors in Nigeria's democracy, a civil society organization that has in its leadership the Sultan of Sokoto and Cardinal Onaikan of the Catholic Church. We are presenting to you a series of programs on the build-up to the 2023 elections. We will be identifying key issues that are critical in ensuring that the elections are free, fair, and credible. At the same time, we'll be bringing in our conversations important voices of people who are key actors, who are intervening, and who are acting to make sure that we have that desired outcome for the forthcoming elections. We are very, very interested in the fact that because for the first time we have a very long campaign period of about 5 months, it's an important opportunity to make sure that this election is centered on the key issues that will produce the best outcome of credible election. Today, our topic for discussion is the important question of the threat of violence to free, fair, and credible election. And for our conversation today, we have 3 key actors that would lead us through identifying why the question of violence is so important and why keeping the peace is the key to having successful elections. Our first guest today is Professor Jude Momodu. He is a professor of peace and conflict studies from the Adama University in Yola and has a long track record in terms of analyzing peace and conflict issues and how they affect elections. Yeah, welcome to the program, Prof.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me.
Our second guest is Madam Kemi Okonyodo. She's been my colleague in civil society for a very long time. And although she's a lawyer by training, the focus of her work in civil society over the past 15 years has been on how to make sure security works for the people and that we ensure that issues of violence and instability are addressed before they become problems for society. Yeah, welcome, Kemi.
Thank you very much, sir.
Finally, we have Idris Muhammad, who is a young actor, but with a long track record in terms of mediating in violence and conflict issues, especially in rural Nigeria. He has important perspectives to share with us in terms of what is really happening in the field today and how that can have a huge impact on the coming elections. Professor Momodu, let's start with you. The question of elections in Nigerian history have often been associated with fears, shall we say, concerns about the possibility of disruptive violence. Why have we had that history for so long? And why is that not behind us, Prof?
Thank you for the question, sir. Nigerian election or elections in Nigeria have been characterized by violence, primarily because of the fact that the players have often refused to play by the rules, because of the high stakes election that we have in Nigeria. In 2017, the sitting president at that time was said in the public that the next election will be do or die affair. That has been the mentality of Nigerian politicians. They want to capture power at all costs because of the high stakes in power, because the largest industry in Nigeria is politics. So you cannot divorce violence from electoral contestations in Nigeria. And again, because of the fact that we've had long years of military rule that has inculcated violent behaviors in people in Nigerians, and particularly the politicians also. So you find that there has been that carriage of violent behavior from one election to another election. The 2015 election, 14 then 15 election, we saw what happened. The country was divided into two. At that time, I think in 2014, a lot of Southerners were moving to the south, and Northerners in the south also were also moving just because of election. That in other climes that is taken for granted. But Nigeria, election is it's a big industry, and also it's also that's why it's characterized by violence. And unfortunately, we have not been able to put this behind us because of the high stakes of election, as I said. Because anybody that captures power, controls the resources. So that is very unfortunate, and I hope that going forward, although we are now beginning to see a lot of improvement, especially the ones that are driven by civil society, and INEC also is also trying to come up with a brilliant initiative to ensure that the players play by the rules, such that we will not witness the level of violence that we've witnessed in the time past. But as I said, violence in election is not something that is only witnessed in this fourth republic. Even in the First Republic, we witnessed some pockets of violence. In fact, that was what eventually even made the military to take over power. So it has been part and parcel of electoral contestations in Nigeria.
Well, I'm struck by one of the words you used to describe politics in Nigeria. You say it's the biggest industry in the country. I would have thought politics is not an industry, it's a vocation. Why would you characterize Nigerian politics as the biggest industry in the country?
I was shocked several years ago when I met a lady, and she was telling me that her father is a politician. Then I asked, I said, is politics a vocation? She said, no. So all of us know that politicking in Nigeria is about capturing power. And once power is captured, you see those who have captured power, you understand, using the resources for their own private interest. So that's why I said that politics is a huge industry in Nigeria because of and that's the attraction. That's why I say that even when you look at the primaries, some political parties, PDP sold APC sold the form for 100 million. So why will the form be sold? And that did not allow so many people who could not afford such. Perhaps they may have a very brilliant intention to change things in Nigeria because of the money that was put for people to obtain forms. And that should tell you that is because of
I get the point.
Yes, the hugeness in politics, the monies that were people making. Of course, they are not accountable. Once they get the governors, senators, they are not accountable to anybody.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Kemi, to come to you, can you just give us a trend analysis between Nigerian elections and violence? What has been the narrative? What has been the story?
Just to lay on what my colleague has said, if you look at pre-elections, So for pre-elections period, that's where we have the campaigns and you have the politicking in the public space. So you tend to have the issue of challenge of thugs taking over campaigns, politicking public spaces where there are campaigns. You have the issues of possible assault, possible killings, because some of the people that infiltrate the campaign train are carrying guns or are carrying weapons. Then you have the issue relating to kidnapping and ritual killings. We see a spike in this in election years, and there are particular hotspots across the country. For the FCT, it's around that Niger Zuma Rock area that you find a high rate of kidnapping, ritual killings taking place around that area. Then when we move into the day of election itself, once upon a time, we had the issue of ballot box snatching. You had the issue of even some of the elections, we've had scenarios where people just come on Okadas into polling units and they're shooting in the air. Once upon a time, it used to be the security personnel, particularly police, that are going with the politicians to the polling units that shoot indiscriminately and kill citizens that are in the area to vote. Then the most predominant, I think, we've not been able to handle is the post-election violence, because of the way they kind of, maybe at times we believe, we just think it just starts, but there are indicators that we don't pay attention to. So by the time the votes are being collated and the announcements are coming out in trickles and people feel they've been disenfranchised, there's the organic gathering that takes place that at times spark post-electoral violence in the country. So these are the kind of trends that we most likely see during the elections.
Thank you, Kemi. Idris, you work for the Sulhu Initiative, which is a mediator in terms of local conflicts and violence. And you operate in the Funtua, Zamfara, Sokoto axis, I believe. What's actually happening today? What do you see in your daily work as you move from town to village, to another town, to another village?
Okay, thank you very much for having me in this program. So Northwest region, where I came from, is facing a protracted conflict which many call banditry. And this conflict displaced millions. Many lost their lives and valuables were destroyed by the bandits and other terror-related actors in the region. The major concern here is the rural communities, the residents there. Many are no longer living in their communities. Some fled to urban areas, some they are not even in Nigeria, especially in the border communities like Jibia in Katsina, like Sabon Birni and Isa in Sokoto, Shinkapi in Zamfara. So you find communities that have more than 200 people or more than 1,000 people. Now nobody is there because of the insecurity. Nobody knows where they are. And another thing, you may have the people in the communities, but they are directly under the control of the bandit leaders. And those bandit leaders, the residents are directly answerable to the bandit leaders. So what bandits tell them is what they are going to do. So when you come to the communities like in Funtua, where I was born and brought up, I can tell you in Funtua alone, I know there are 26 communities that are no-go area. Nobody can go that area. Even some of the residents that left the community will tell you that I rather die here than to go back there because of the threats from the armed groups. Then when you move to the communities close to Funtua, like Sabwa local government, like Dandumi and Binungwari and Dansado that is in Zamfara, those communities are controlled, some communities in those local governments are controlled by Ansharu terror groups. And I think since 2020, this group has been warning the communities that you should not even think of participating in an election. They prohibited campaigns, any conversation on politics. I can tell you that in Binungwari, along this Makwa, Nachibi, Kwadaga, Damari, it's hardly to see any political party campaign posters in people's house. Because the resident there will tell you that this Ansaru, they are under providing security now. Because bandits can no longer attack them like the way they are doing because of the presence of Ansaru. And these Ansaru have already set rules and regulations for the communities. Number one, no smoking, no drinking, no anything that has to do with civilization, elections. I could remember sometimes they came publicly and telling people that democracy has failed you. Look at the situation you are now. You have nothing doing now. Bandits are killing you. So don't ever think of participating in 2023 general elections. So this is a serious threat. When you look at the safety of the INEC officials, the safety of the voters themselves, the INEC materials, even the candidates, and also even the security personnel to deploy to those communities. I don't think it is possible, because when you go there, you'll understand the real scenario on the ground. So our major concern is how comes election will be held in those communities, looking at the threat from the bandits and other terror-related armed groups in those affected areas.
Thank you for posing that important question, but above all for the frightening analysis you have done, which draws attention to the fact that there are vast territories that are ungoverned by the Nigerian state, but are actually governed by either bandits or by terrorists. Professor Momodu, with that sort of situation in large parts of the country, what are the prospects for even being able to organize elections, given the level of insecurity and violence in the country today?
Yes. For some areas, you just talked about the situation of Katsina now. When you go to Zamfara, so you go even to the southeast also, elections will be very difficult to hold elections in some communities in those areas. And just like you rightly mentioned, that there are large swath of areas that are ungoverned spaces that are alternatively governed by non-state armed group. You go to the southeast now, the IPOB threat there also. There are so many communities where elections will be very difficult, except the military step up their offensive against those areas. So what I'm saying is that the prospect is very slim of having elections in those areas. And that's why, as I said, the federal government, working in collaboration with the state government, must ensure that they deal with the threat posed by these alternate governors, the non-state armed groups that are operating in those areas. But again, the question that raises was just like what he said. It raises that is because democracy has failed in those areas. That's why those people have now become alternate governors that are now resonating with the people. In fact, some of them are even collecting taxes. People are fully paying tax. They even come and tell that these people are better governing us. They've governed us even better than the people that we voted for. So that's an issue that the politicians that are throw themselves forward now to contest, and they should actually be worried about that. But the prospect, as I said, is slim. But if the government can step up its game of rooting out these people, I believe that is possible, because Jonathan did something close to that. I recall in 2014, it was difficult to have hold election in Borno, parts of Adama, the Yobe State, and that was what led to the postponement of the election, and the military offensive against Boko Haram was stepped up. So if something like that can be done, I'm sure that those areas that are appearing to be difficult for election to hold now, maybe we'll be able to hold the elections in those areas. But if government, on the contrary, is unable to do so, I believe that nobody wants to go and risk their life. Even the security agencies, when you post them there, they will not want to go there. Talk less of civilians that are the electoral, the INEC, and the those monitoring and the election and the contestant. You recall also in Anambra, the last election that held in Anambra, campaigns were done in Lagos. They couldn't do their campaign in Anambra. So it's a serious threat that the government must try and do something about.
Thank you, Prof. Kemi, he's raised an important issue that in 2015, it appeared as if it will be impossible to hold elections in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states because of the level of violence. But finally, the security agencies intervened, were able to reduce the violence, and eventually the elections held all over the country. Are you positive we can do that again? Is the level of violence in the country currently amenable to being reduced to the level when the organization of elections becomes possible?
I think it would have to be a mixed approach. And if I first start from Anambra. So Anambra, the level of insecurity in Anambra was high. However, I think it was a combination of a political and security or military approach. If that worked in Anambra, that probably should be the approach for the Southeast. So let's not take one cap fits all. You know, that probably could be the approach for the Southeast, and find also maybe that could also help in other parts where you find the non-state armed groups, the leadership of the non-state armed groups amenable to dialogue, that there could be a dialogue process, a political interface process that can make them cease fire and let's see how we can work together. That's one. The offensive, military offensive, could just work if that political approach doesn't work. And I think it would have to be staggered, because I think the military right now is overstretched. Unlike the 2015, where the capacity or how they were deployed across was not fully 36, including the FCT. I think right now the military is deployed across the country. And you ask what's the level of complementary efforts that could assist them, because it's beyond Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe now. We're looking at the Northwest. Probably Zamfara. I was at a meeting last week, and one of the discussions that also on election security is that there's a possibility that Zamfara might not be as insecure or hot as we thought it would be, because there's an alignment with the political actors, and that it will most likely be a one-party state. And because it will be a one-party state, those that control, the politicians that control some of these armed groups would get their boys to sheath their arm. So if we have such dynamics, you know, the political dynamics and the alignments that is taking place, we might see a scenario where there would be relative peace across the country, or in some parts of the country, that would make it possible for elections to hold.
Do you think that will work in the areas where you intervene? Can they be spoken to? Are the political godfathers going to be able to reach out to them to stay action till after the elections?
Yes, I think there is possibility of having the peaceful election when the needed put in place. For example, when you put the kinetic and non-kinetic approach ahead of the period. For example, in the non-kinetic approach, those bandits are not unknown. They are known in their communities. And the destruction of traditional system is what will led the crisis, because I think if government can actively, fully engage the traditional leaders and the influential individuals in the communities, they can identify who is who among the bandit leaders, that maybe government can sit down with them and bring the possibility of having peaceful election. Government has tried many times through amnesty and peace pacts with some of the bandit leaders, but few months or weeks later, they will resurrect again and start attacking communities. And another thing is strengthening the policing I always emphasize, especially in those states like Katsina, Sokoto. Let's talk about Sokoto. The entire zone where the crisis is happening in Sokoto is Sokoto East. And this Sokoto East is largely border communities with Niger Republic. I could remember I was in Leyland last 2 months. I went for a research, and I found out there are over 600 porous borders in only one local government. And I was discussing with an immigration officer, and he told me that someone can just come in Niger Republic, commit any sort of crime, and run away because of, let me say, there is no availability of manpower among the security to mount all those porous borders. So I think here needs strengthening the policing. For example, in Sokoto, Katsina, in places like Jibia, Daura, and also Kebbi also. So when things put together, I think the possibility will be. And another alternative, for communities where people already left or where people are there, but under the dictate of the bandit, because I don't want to be like not giving solution to this, but I think maybe if INEC can collaborate with security to bring those communities to the urban areas, establish a temporary polling unit for them to exercise their right, I think that one will help. But
I think that was done in 2015 actually. INEC was able to transfer existing polling units where the communities have been forced out and were living separately to organize elections. So that's a possibility for INEC to reflect upon how to move forward. Viewers, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. We are still on Nigeria Decides 2023, looking at the issues that affect the elections and the voices of actors that are intervening. The topic today is the question of widespread violence and its possible impact on the 2023 elections, which are just 5 months away. Kemi, you have had a long experience in terms of civil society interventions, in terms of election violence. The current work you are doing, what is it showing you? What's the mapping of the violence? How is that mapping going on? What are the possible lines of preparations by various actors and agencies to make sure we're able to ensure that violence does not overwhelm our capacity to hold free and fair elections?
Thank you, Prof. I believe that some of us are already conducting hotspot mapping. So like last week, there was a presentation of volatile possible states that we need to watch out for. And of course, within that mapping, Southeast, Abia was flagged, Imo was also flagged. Not that Anambra looks okay, right? But the others also have their pockets of issues. But Abia, Imo were the ones that were very red. The Northwest generally, Kaduna, Kebbi, Katsina, just the ones my brother here has highlighted. In the Southwest, it looks, I think the Southwest can give a deceptive, peaceful look, depending on how things turn out. So in my thoughts, I think the Southwest is a place to watch out for post-elections and the day of election. Then if you look at the Northeast is definitely on our radar because of the insurgency and the activities of Boko Haram and other groups, ISWAP, within that territory. What does that tell us? You also have groups working on looking at also the types of threats peculiar to certain groups. So P1 is looking at the threats that women could face. And we're looking at women through the lens of those that will be deployed from the Electoral Policing Agency, that's INEC, and the Law Enforcement and Security. And then we're looking at women as voters, as campaigners, and as mobilizers. If we put all of this together, what we want to see is a scenario where the information from civil society is given those that need to act. So INEC, the Law Enforcement and Security actors, Interconsultative Committee on Election Security, that team need to look at the information and plan their deployment and operations around this. And we want to see a scenario. I think one of the push that I heard from that meeting was that we see a lot of activities of ICCES at the national level, but you don't see their engagement at the state level. And you're not sure how active they are at the state level. And we know that politics is local. So when we're talking about this violence, the violence is not going to happen at the headquarters in Abuja. The violence starts on the streets, in the states, in the local government areas. So how are we seeing deployment of resources and capacity on the ground? We're not sure. We keep hearing it will be well. I believe that Situation Room would convey a series of meetings as we get closer to the elections with the relevant actors and with civil society, and we would have closer dialogues and see how things will span out. We just hope that they will not make themselves available too late to the time where there could be effect or beneficial discussion.
Professor Momodu, we been on strike for quite some time, but I know for years the academics who work in this area have been doing a lot of research on this theme of violence, politics, and Nigerian elections. What are your key findings, and how would those findings help us in getting a way forward for this 2023 elections?
Thank you for the question, sir. What we have found out is that at the core of the crisis we have in Nigeria today is the failure of governance, whether it is from the federal, state, and local governments. In fact, in most places, governance is not happening in most places. And that's why if you go to the Northeast, you find that you now have alternate governors. In ISWAP, they're now collecting taxes, they are now helping the community, protecting the community, even ensuring that there's justice in such communities. And people have now, they now resonate in the minds of people within those areas. So governance, we have not been able to get governance right. And because of that, also, we've also found out there's a disconnect between the people, the citizens, and those in government, because we find that those who are in government, they don't even understand they don't even care or understand the needs of the people. You understand? Their needs and yearning, they don't even care about them. So that has what encouraged some sort of a disconnect, which is also giving back to that sense of injustice, that those in government they are not just because they are not providing services that will touch our lives. So that is very critical. Then again, we also find out that the institutions our institutions, public institutions, are very weak. Take, for instance, the security institutions, whether it is the military or the police, they are very weak. There's no capacity. So you will find capacity and professionalism in those institutions. And once you have such institutions that are supposed to ensure law and order, weak. And that's why today you have non-state armed groups everywhere that are even providing security. Some of them are creating chaos in so many places because of the weakness of the security institution. And also the public institutions also, whether it is the civil service, whether it is the justice system, also the courts, also these institutions are weak. So there's need for us to now begin to strengthen those institutions so that they'll be able to deliver quality service to the people. One reason why you have there was time we were talking to some had us in Adamawa State. They told us, we don't have confidence in the court, even in the police. Because when we go, we take our case there, the police is only interested in what collecting money from us. And when our cases go to the court, the judges and those there, they will just be ripping them off. So there's no confidence. So what they now do is to now try and do revenge. That's why we find out most of the attacks of the Fulanis are retaliatory attacks when their cattle have been stolen. So there's need for institutions to be strengthened so that they'll be able to deliver the services to the people. So that's then also we've also find out that there's also incapacity on the part of all the peace building institutions also. Even though you may see them doing working, although they have been able to play a very significant role, but there's also the need for us to be able to strengthen their capacity also, especially those at the local level. You understand? Today, if you even ask some of the community leaders, they don't even know what they are supposed to do. All the complaints that now they don't have the legal backing, they don't have the resources, but there's a lot they can do at their level. Before now, they used to be the ones in charge of law and order in community, other than beyond being a custodian of the customs and traditions of the people also. So there's need for capacity of those peace building actors within the community to be strengthened, because just like my colleague rightly said, most of the problems we're talking, they are local. And who are those in charge of the local communities, the traditional rulers? Then we've also found out that there's no coordination. There's no coordination between those who are doing peace building work. There's no coordination, adequate coordination between those in government, between the civil society body. There needs to be adequate, effective coordination between, so that we will not be duplicating. Because what you find today is that there's a lot of duplication of peace building activities on the field there. So if we can have a situation whereby ideas can be shared, they can be peer reviewed, they can coordinate from the local level to the state level to the federal level, I'm sure that peace building activities will be able to fix some of the problems we're having today. But as I said, there's need for us to get governance right. If we must have, then the institutions also must do what they're supposed to do, so that they don't compromise during election. People have been talking about vote buying. Vote buying is a major threat, but we only focus on those who are the electorates who are being offered money. What about the compromises that's going on? I participated in 2019 election. I was in charge of the local government, and I saw a lot of compromises. When the political the agents come, when they are offering people money, the police will just be looking at the other side, because they've collected their own. They've been settled before that. So we also must put our focus on the police also, and the INEC, some INEC personnel also who also compromise also. So there's need for us to be more vigilant also, because there's no vigilance. And again, there's also need for us to begin to conscientize the electorate also, that they don't only, not that they should all come out and vote. After voting, they also must not go to sleep. They must now begin to demand for accountability. I'm also of the opinion that now we should not just see the debate. Yes, the debate should be issue-based, but though it should be issue-based, but it should not only be we should not only be interrogating the issues, but we also be making inputs. You understand? The making inputs is into the manifestos of the contestant. It's very important, so that once they come and talk to us, I expect I'm a member of us, so I expect us to even invite the major contestant. Come to the university. If you go to US, you see senators, you see president, they take their campaigns to the university. Let's invite them. What do you have for us? We have been on strike now. What is your plan for the universities? So I also expect that the women organization also should invite them and come and tell us what is your plan. And the youth also, everybody should not just sit back and let us, it's time for us to engage. And so accountability starts from now. So if you don't make them accountable now, and also make sure that they factor your own needs and yearnings into their manifestos, by the time they get there, you'll not be able to hold them accountable.
That's in fact a very important point. Idris Muhammad, I think two sets of issues have been raised. One is that there is a lot of contingency planning at the national level, but there's little evidence that this has percolated to the local level. The second issue that has been raised is that a lot of the core problems are medium to long-term governance issues. Meanwhile, we are talking of a few months to the elections. As somebody who is focused on a local area, what insights can you offer us? Who are these people that are taking over governance? What are the ways of reaching out to them to make sure that they allow these elections? And if that's not possible, how can you use kinetic energy, as you have suggested, to handle that situation? So what are the perspectives of the local level in the Northwest?
Okay, thank you once again. Like I said earlier, these communities are in ungovernable space. They have been abandoned for a very long time. No any sign of governance there. They don't know anything dividend of democracy. They only know governance exists when times for election comes like this. There is a popular saying in Hausa we are saying, a typical politician know each and everybody's house to put a ballot box there. But when it comes to the dividend of democracy, their eyes are closed. They don't see there, they can't go there. So that is number one thing. So people been there for long, they are the ones that are providing security for themselves, providing health for themselves, providing education, water, electricity, so nothing from government. So when it comes to the security, I can tell you now, in those communities, it's hardly to see 10 people, one without gun. Another serious threat. Because if you can able to put bandits in one place, what about the people that possess arms? Now they arm themselves against bandits. And politicians are there to use these groups for their own interests. For example, in Sokoto, I heard that in the Sokoto East, there is a politician that bought guns, over 500 pieces, and distributed to his supporters in the name of protection against bandits. Who knows what is his planning ahead of 2023? So I think it's holistic approach. Number one, we need to bring down the traditional leaders, because these traditional leaders are even more closer to the bandits than the government. Because I heard many times people are saying these traditional leaders are collaborating with, it is not like that. In a rural community where there is just 2 policemen and there are over 50 or 100 bandits, how do you think a traditional leader will fight the bandit? And these 2 policemen, maybe one has gone, the other one doesn't have. And sometimes they are coming weekly or monthly to come and see what is happening there. So I think the traditional leaders are just playing their card, not like they are collaborating with the armed bandit. They are playing their card so that they will live in peace. So I think when we bring these traditional leaders, sit down with them. Who are these perpetrators? Who do you think may pose threat to the 2023 elections? Let's bring them, because they know them. If you go to the rural communities and ask them who is attacking you, they will tell you, so son of so, elder brother of so, brother of so. They know everybody. But when you bring them, understand what did they want? How do they allow the peaceful conduct of 2023 election in the various communities? That is the non-kinetic approach. Then there is need for community engagement and participatory approach in peace buildings. Because sometimes government will just come out and say, we negotiated with bandits or we have amnesty with them. While the real victims are there looking at government like this. This person is killing us, destroy our farmlands. Some communities are not, they do not have access to their farm for over 6-7 years. No schools, no hospitals, markets were shut down. And now you wake up one day in national television and said, we agreed with bandits. Now they drop arms. They are no good. What about the victims? Do you think if you sign peace pact with the bandits, the victims they are looking at those that kill their children, those that collected millions of nairas from them in the name of ransom. And now you are saying that we signed no any engagement. I think when you bring the communities, the residents together to understand gun cannot end this fight. There is dialogue, there is amnesty, there is compensation, there is mediation. So people understand the kind of holistic approach government want to put in place in order to end the conflict. I think that one will help. When it comes to the kinetic approach, I think government now, like one perspective that came to my mind yesterday, if you look at from Funtua to Sokoto, it's hardly to pass 2 to 3 days without bandit mounted checkpoint and block dormitories. So, and those places, there are policemen at the checking point there, but they are not enough. Take less of deploying them to those communities. A report that I read said that there are over 700 communities that are directly under control of bandits in Katsina, Sokoto, and Zamfara alone. The report didn't capture even Kaduna and Kebbi. So what are we going to do there? How many police do we have to send to those communities? What about the military? What about the civil defense corps? So I think government needs to bring, even among the security, there is issue of interagency rivalry. Some of them are not even working together to understand the situation. Military are doing different things, police are doing different things, civil defense are doing different things. I think when government can put the bosses together of these security agencies, let them come up with a strong team that can work with one voice. Let me give you, for example, now. When there was an airstrike in Fakai in Tuji's home, Tuji came out and said, we already signed a peace pact with government and now government disables. Who knows, is it the federal government or the state government? That means there is no collaboration. So if there is collaboration maybe between federal government and the state government, maybe state government has a kind of silent negotiation with him, let him drop arms so that peace will reign in their communities. And now Air Force come and attack see the disparities and the other things. So I think we need coordination and collaboration between the state government and the federal government and all the security agencies, the traditional leaders, the religious-based groups, and the communities. Because some communities, residents are even supporting the armed groups because they are providing what government failed to provide for them.
Thank you, Idris. I think these are very important issues you have raised about the need for a unified approach with all actors working in concert rather than in silos, and therefore creating more difficulties than solving problems. Kemi, let me come back to you. You pointed out in your earlier intervention that there's pre-election violence, there's election day violence, and there's post-election violence. Which of these are a major area of concern as we move towards the next elections? And what differentiates them? What are the motivations for each of them?
My thought, I think it would be during and post for the 2023 elections. And I say during and post because of some of the things we see. So for example, let me use Lagos State as an example. Lagos State seemingly looks like an APC state, an APC controlled state. But we know also for a fact that during the 2019, that was our last elections, our 2019 elections, there were issues relating to inclusiveness and alternative voices, accommodation of alternative voices in Lagos, which was ethnic based, right, to the northerners and to the southeasterners, to the extent that major influencers in Lagos can be quoted for making certain inflammatory statements. I'm not sure that has changed per se in Lagos. So you look at also when the CVR, when the voters registration was taking place, that there were incidents of cutting away of the machines in certain places that were mainly dominated by minorities in the states. So you would there's the tendency to see that those places would be attacked by political thugs, maybe to stop them from voting, so as to kind of push votes in their favor. In Kano, we also saw similar trends in Kano in 2019. In the southeast, the challenge would be, would they, with one of the main candidates being from the southeast, there's a joke with some of my friends that all of a sudden we noticed, if you go on Twitter, that most of the Twitter handles that had IPOB followership now has the Labour Party followership. Can we read something there? Could that be a reason for the Southeast to be peaceful or calm for the purpose of the election, because they have an interest in the national elections? If for one reason or the other, it doesn't go their way, that's why I said the post-elections violence, and then looking at possible challenges with technology and with the BVR that are going to be introduced, you know, what could be the implication of that? We know the issues, we have the perennial issues with logistics with INEC. Is it going to go away with 2023? I don't think so. Then we have the polling units issues of overpopulated polling units vis-a-vis polling units that you don't have enough people there. And because of this mistrust between the citizens and the government, there is no amount of goodwill or good steps or good intentions on the part of government that cannot be misconstrued by the citizens. So if you now find people 2,500 in a polling unit, and then you find a secluded polling unit somewhere, and they're not up to 500, then it is said that that polling unit has been captured, and it's the one party wants to take advantage of it. Okay. So those are the reasons I said during and post would be the likelihood of violence we should look out for.
Thank you, Kemi. We have just 2 more minutes, Professor Momodu. Could you talk to us about what are the campaign issues that could generate violence as we have already entered this long 5 months campaign period? What is of concern to you in terms of campaign issues?
Yes, there are lots of issues. One of it is insecurity. Just imagine if somebody like Peter Obi begins to talk about a campaign about fighting insecurity in Nigeria. People will ask him, "What have you done about insecurity in the southeast?" And again, as people are campaigning about fighting insecurity, also, of course, you would likely there's a tendency that you see a rise in insecurity because of the value chain that has been created around the issues of insecurity, whether it is banditry or the Boko Haram insurgency. Because of those who are benefiting there, will also ensure that they also step up their game also. So then also another issue that may likely cause is the issue of religion. Because Nigeria is a diverse in terms of ethnicity and religion also. So religion is going to be a factor, and the ethnicity and region also. Of course, we're already seeing a situation whereby the Muslim ticket, the tension that has created also. So, of course, people will want to campaign along religious lines also, and also along region also. Atiku is from the north, Bola Tinubu is from the southwest, and Peter Obi is from the southeast also. But again, fundamentally, I think the issues that should actually come to the fore or be in the front burner for us is what are issues of what? How do we deal with insecurity? How do we also fix the economy that is in doldrums today? You understand? How do we also deal with issues of infrastructure? As I speak to you today, there are about 60,000 abandoned projects across Nigeria that will be requiring needing about 12 trillion. So these are the issues. Also the issue of what? of healthcare also. These are the issues that should come to the front burner. The issue of education also. These are the issues that we should be asking them. And I've not seen people ask what the politicians the contestants will tell, we are going to do this, but how do you intend to do it? What are the timelines also? So that we'll be able to track what they are supposed to do. You understand? But again, as I said, people, civil society, I'm happy that the civil society as well has taken it upon themselves also. But society should also try and engage or incorporate other key sectors of the society also. This time around, I want to see NLC, the labor unions, also organizing debates for the contestant. Come and tell us, what is your plan? The other time, Atiku was saying that he was going to give the federal universities to the state also. Let's ask him also so that we can know his intention. If you are going to do, do you intend what? Will that be better than what it is now? You understand? So it should actually be a time for us to be engaging them so that we can really toughen them and get them to do the best. And also, as I said, it should not stop there. Also, we also must extend ourselves to ensure that we also, after election, that is when the job should even start. For us to now begin to hold them into account, to say, you have not done this. You promised you do A and B, C, and you're here to do it.
Thank you very much, viewers. This is Nigeria Decides 2023, where we look at issues that affect the forthcoming elections and the voices that are intervening to make sure that these elections are free, fair, and credible. I think this maiden edition has had a fantastic start, and I want to thank our guests. Idris Muhammad, you are from the Sulhu Initiative, and you are a practical person engaging and organizing within conflict societies. Thanks for your contribution and welcome to the program.
You're welcome, sir.
Kemi Okenyedo, you've had a long experience in terms of security analysis and planning civil society interventions to create conditions for free and fair elections, and you have raised very pertinent issues in terms of what we need to do to make sure that these elections remain free, fair, and credible. Professor Momodu from the Modibo Adama University, thank you so much for your participation and for your insights, your concluding words on the importance of focusing on the real issues of concern to people like health and education, rather than focusing on identity issues, ethnicity, religion, should be food for thought as we move forward. Thank you all for your participation, and see you next week.
Thank you, sir.